Hello, wonderful. This is Sarah, and I am here with the author of two books on narcissism, From Victim to Victor, the Narcissism Survival Guide, and the Rule Book of a Narcissist. So Mariette Jansen has joined us from the Netherlands. And if you're on the podcast, I hate that you cannot see her beautiful tulips behind her. As we were getting to know each other, I said, oh, your tulips are so pretty. And so I will always associate our conversation with tulips and the wisdom I know you are going to bring. How are you today?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm from the Netherlands, but I actually live in London. So I've moved countries because of my husband, and he was the love of my life. And I just hopped overseas to be with him. Yeah.
Oh, congratulations on finding love. That is absolutely wonderful.
It was good. Yeah, I was ready for it. But by then I was 37, 38. So, I'd been on a journey to escape, I would say, the effects of the toxic people in my life. And by then I was almost fully myself. It took a few more years to sort of shake it all off. But yeah, it is lovely. It's very important. So it's very hopeful, I think, when people listen to this podcast and listen to me and then think, well, I needed to be 37. I had a lot of work done on myself, lots of therapy, lots of coaching, all sorts of things. And, in the end, I arrived, and that's for everybody. Yeah. If you keep on doing the work, trust the process, and you will arrive. I don't think the universe will send us here to do all sorts of work and not arrive in the end.
Oh, that's beautiful. And I agree. And I feel like I have arrived to this point, and I'm excited about launching the next point of my life, whatever that ends up being. When I asked you what your favorite thing was to talk about, you talked about finding your own power and having more power than you imagine within cases of emotional abuse. Can you tell people what you meant by that?
When you are the victim of emotional abuse, and in my situation, it was narcissistic abuse from my mother, I felt powerless. I felt I was the one to blame. I did everything wrong. I tried to fix something. I took all sorts of actions to make something work, but it all came from a position of not knowing, not understanding what was really going on, and actually not thinking for myself. I was only thinking about my mother, really. How can I please her? How can I keep her safe? How can I improve our relationship? What can I do different in order to please her? And it's intoxicating my mind. 95% of my thoughts were about her and not about me. If you can step away, and that's a process, but if you can step away from your emotional abuser, it is going to create space in your head to start to develop your own thoughts. And with your own thoughts comes a connection with who you are. And then you're on a journey to discover your own truth. And when you touch on your own truth, you can be so powerful. Nothing has to stop you. But it needs to be that authentic and that realness you. And it's very difficult to get in touch with that authentic you if there's all that noise on the line of, in my case, of the narcissist. If you get in touch with your authentic you have power to change that relationship around. You have the power to not be affected by the abuse because you recognize it. You don't buy into it anymore. You value yourself. You say, I'm not having being treated like this. That's just not good. The self-respect comes up and you say, no, stop. I step away from this. So whatever the abuser throws at you, it's almost like you have a shield in front of you and it just bounces off. It doesn't come in, which then means that actually the abuse doesn't take place.
Yeah, so, and I love what you said about not being affected, because I think sometimes there's this idea that maybe I won't let it bother me. And I like to say I won't let it control me, right? Because if someone's acting badly, if you notice, if you think something's wrong, if you think they shouldn't talk to me that way, or I don't want to surround myself with people who act that way, that's normal. That's good. That's seeing it. Because if you've grown up in a house with a narcissistic mother, it may feel really normal to be put down, to
Yeah.
be, not the main event of your own life, her being the main event of your own life. And so I do want to dive into what you said on that and say I agree and differentiate that for our listeners, because what you described is noticing, but then not letting it control you.
And that thing of control is fascinating, because I'm a life coach. I work with clients who have experienced with abuse, and try to heal from it and overcome it. And sometimes they say, no, I'm not controlled by my ex-husband anymore, because I'm working really hard to make up for what he's not doing to my children, what he's not offering my children. I'm really making up for that. And I'm doing everything opposite of how he wants me to do it. And that's control. Yeah. But it is not a way of control that's that is easily recognized, because they're saying, I'm free, I'm doing everything different from how he wanted me to do it. But actually, it informs all their choices. It's still the abuser that informs all their choices. So it's not doing things differently. It's doing things because you are doing them in the way you want to do them, and you believe it's the right way.
So how do you begin that practice of not just doing things differently, but doing things authentically? How do you begin that process? What are your first baby steps?
The baby steps are getting to know yourself. Yeah, because when you're subjected to emotional abuse, there's not a lot of space in your system to connect with yourself. And we know all the stories of people who are subjected for years. They've lost their sense of self. They don't even know who they are anymore. There's no confidence. There's no self-worth. But the most important thing is they don't know what they like, what they don't like. They just know how to keep themselves in survival mode, or how to please their abuser. So the first step would be to really start to look at yourself and think, who am I? And not in a bigger picture. You can start really basic. You can start just looking at yourself, observing yourself, and saying, well, this is a day today. What do I really like? And what is it about it that I really like? Yeah, because you can say, I go for a walk. Yeah, I like to go for a walk. Okay, but what is underneath it then? Yeah, and underneath it might be, I like to go for that walk because it means I can be with myself. I am in nature, which is good for me, but I don't have to look at other people, or I can really be with me. And that is something that I love. So instead of saying I like to walk, it's like, I'm discovering now, I actually really like to spend time with me. Yeah. For other people, it might be the opposite. And they might say, oh, I love being with people. Oh, what is it about being with people? So, oh, I love to connect, and I love to have the vibe and the thing that really makes me alive. Yeah. And maybe you like to be in nature as well as being with other people. So things are not exclusive, because a lot of us have these opposite needs and elements in how we are. So we can be very impatient and at the same time have the patience of a saint. Yeah, or not at the same time, but in a different situation. Still, you are the same person, but it depends on situations then. But it's discovering all these very basic elements of who you are. And then you drill down over time, you get deeper and deeper and deeper. Yeah.
I love how specific you were. Sometimes people in this space, they kind of give more general answers, such as, self-love, self-worth, and these things are, we obviously want to love ourselves and consider ourselves worthy, but I want to point out how specific you were, not only what you like, but what about it you like, because I agree that that is the answer to moving forward. And it's a missing piece that I see a lot of people miss. I call it abstract thinking, or, some abstract statement like, well, work on your confidence. Well, someone could be confident at work, but not confident in dating, or confident in dating, but not confident at work, or confident parenting and not confident in crowds, right? So that very specific nature of what you like about it and what works for you. I just really wanted to shine a light on that for our listeners, because that's a very important piece that I've seen.
Yeah. And I would say that's how I approach things, because, for years I was reading self-help books. I'm sure you've done it as well. And, most people have done it. And as you say, then they say, oh, yeah, you have to relax more, go on holiday. And you think, yeah, that's nice. I mean, for a start, it costs a lot of money. I need to have free time and I can't do it now. Or take a dog. Yeah, it's also nice. But, that's just sort of a bit of a hallelujah solution. It's sort of like, yeah, ultimately it might happen, but what can you do at this moment in time? So if it then comes to relax more, I would say find a 1-minute meditation and do that 5 times a day. That's one way of bringing it into your life straight away.
I always giggle. You're talking about getting a dog, and I always giggle and say, oh, is there a study that shows that people with dogs are less likely to end up in toxic relationships than people who don't have dogs? And they giggle. And of course they say, well, no, that's not true. And I say, then why is that your healing strategy? Yeah. If there's no basis to it working, why would you do something so expensive and such a commitment where there's no statistical data on it working?
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the word healing strategy, and I think a healing strategy is just baby steps, maybe 100,000 baby steps.
Yeah, I agree.
But every single baby step would help you in your healing. So if it's and you mentioned confidence in dating. So, how do I get confidence in dating? Well, my tip would be read through. If you have an experience with an emotional abusive ex-partner, read through what are the red flags. Yeah, be prepared. So already go on your first date on the back burner, the red flags, they might flag up. Or also even you could sort of try some things out. Yeah, it's very naughty in a way, but sort of, test the waters with a certain question, with a certain thing, and just observe how the other person is responding to that. That gives you a lot of information. And that's information, or going into a situation with all that knowledge and that preparation, will make you feel less vulnerable and more confident, because you will take control of that situation. You go home afterwards and you'll make a list and you think through and you tick boxes or not. And then you can decide on the next step. Am I going to see this person again? Or is it dodgy? Are there too many ticks? I'm not going for that anymore.
I like that you said too many ticks too, because I think we align on so many things. There's so many things I'm saying, yes, I agree. Because 1,000 steps to get to your goal, people don't want to do. They want to find the one thing. What's the one book that can solve all the problems, or the one coach I can have 1 hour-long conversation with them and it's just going to solve all my problems. And it's just not that way. Our brains aren't structured that way. When we learned math as kids, we learned it over time, right? We learned different pieces and got to bigger and harder and broader things. So I do agree with that. And then, so a pattern of healing And then within the red flags, if you're meeting someone romantically or otherwise, a pattern of red flags, because kind of people say, what's the one thing? Well, probably what the one, some of the one things are, and you probably put it up with it in a past relationship. I could say if someone cusses you out and leaves you stranded somewhere, that's a red flag, obviously. But then I say, well, did you experience that before? Yes. Well, did you leave? No. Okay. So obviously there's something more in place than, just a list of red flags, right? Which you talked about, the tics, the pattern.
What comes in as well is self-respect. Yeah, in an abusive relationship, the self-respect is totally undermined. There is no space for it. And it's important to make that part of the healing as well, to build up that self-respect and say to yourself, I am not putting up with this. I am too valuable to allow this to happen to me. It's just not happening. And this is where boundaries comes in. And, a lot of victims of narcissistic abuse and possibly other abuse have a real difficulty with putting boundaries in place. They are so used to going with the flow, to saying, yeah, it's fine, it's not important. And, cognitive dissonance, that element where something happens and it doesn't feel good and it isn't right, but in your internal dialogue, you make it right because you say, it's not that important. So you're stranded. Yeah, you're left there. That's a red flag. But then you say, I was nearly home anyway. Or I called my friend and she picked me up and it was fine. Nothing happened. Nothing bad happened to me. That is just not addressing the real red flag. And that is also not honoring your self-respect. It's just saying, oh, I'm not important. And it's sort of, I can deal with it and it's fine. And that's what happens a lot in order to survive in an abusive relationship. But it's not healthy to apply that in day-to-day life. And it's not healthy to start applying that. And if you want to develop a healthy relationship.
And those are my favorite red flags to talk about. We always want to talk about external red flags, like what are they doing? What are they thinking? What are they saying? But the most important red flags are those internal. Do you notice yourself minimizing a situation? Do you notice yourself talking to your friends about a toxic person and thinking, ooh, I better not say that because then they'll think, it's those internal red flags that I think are 1,000 times more crucial than the outer red flags.
Oh, it's like, it's all about how it feels for you. Yeah, because someone might do something that indicates abuse, but if it doesn't come into you, then actually it's okay. Yeah. But if you feel uncomfortable, if you think this isn't right, if you get nervous in the presence of that person, or if you get nervous before you meet that person, and not because it's excitement and butterflies, but because it's like, oh, am I going to do the right thing? Am I dressed properly? Am I sort of, all these sort of things. It's you are the judge of what is happening to you. And if you don't feel right, and if you feel uncomfortable, then something is happening that's not good for you. And whatever other people say to you, if it doesn't feel right, it's important to honor that. You have
agree
that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's important to do the healing work so we get a little more in balance, right? So I know after a toxic relationship, everyone feels like a prickly pear. We're just like, oh, we're so raw that everything can feel really sensitive. And so it's important to patch up and heal up, and then to have a really good judgment. Is that what you talk about in your book?
I wanted to bring up my book. My first book offers 50 traits of a narcissist. And again, you say to me, I'm very much into the detail and into the baby steps. And in this book, in this checklist, it says, this is, I can just open or say, my narcissist has double standards. Yeah, fine. Yeah. Then you can talk for hours about it, but it's not that. So my narcissist has double standard, and he presents it or she presents it in this way. Then the exercise starts and says, how does it affect me in my stress levels, in my happiness level? How affected my thought process? How do I feel about it, and how do I behave in that situation? So it's breaking down again in very specific situations where you can really nail down what actually is going on for you. So you can say, I'm very unhappy with someone. I'm very sort of, something is not right. And you can't work with that. But you can work with when you say, if this happens, if the double standards are presented to me, I get really sweaty hands, and my thoughts are blocked, and I can't think properly. But I know it's double standard, but I don't know how to bring that up, and I feel so uncomfortable, and I get very agitated, and my behavior becomes all wobbly, or I have the urge to walk away. Now, those are very specific signals again that you can work with, and you can recognize it in other situations. You think, I had it in that situation, and now I have it in this situation. So this situation also is not good for me.
I agree completely. And again, it's about what you are feeling and experiencing, not necessarily what they are doing, even though there's some probably more obvious circumstances where, if they're screaming at wait staff or cheating or lying, some of those things are more obvious. But to keep yourself safe, we want to recognize the early signals of these situations, not wait, 2 or 3 years and then collect all this data. You're in a business partnership with someone, or you've got a roommate that's toxic, or a romantic partnership that's toxic. That's by the time we get all the answers, we've put in too much time.
Yeah.
Right.
Unless we've got the knowledge and then the experience. And for instance, when it comes to narcissists, to find out if someone has narcissistic tendencies, it's really cool to sort of have an opinion against their opinion, because they can't stand that. I have never heard of any narcissist who's sort of, oh, well, you think differently. Oh, you think I'm wrong. Well, that's fine. They really get worked up about it. So if you are with whoever, as one of the sort of the checks at a very early stage could be that just disagree, just for the sake of it, and observe what the reaction is going to be, because then you've got a really good angle, a really good idea if this might be someone who's not good for you. Yeah.
Love it. So please tell people where they can find more about you, your books, your website. Where do you want people to find more out about you?
Yeah. Well, they can go to my website, which is called drdestress.co.uk, and it's doctor like DR, and then de-stress, D-E, stress.co.uk. My books are available on Amazon, worldwide, and on both on Kindle, and the first one, From Victim to Victor, also as an audiobook. What I also offer is a free coaching call, and that's, for some people, they really want to have some coaching, some hints and tips. Some others want some validation, or are wondering, is this person toxic? Is this person wrong for me? Is this normal behavior? Am I in the right place? So if people want to book for that free coaching call, then they can do that via my website as well.
Awesome. Well, Mariette, if you had 1 minute that you could broadcast your voice to the entire world and say one thing, what would you want to say?
Oh, I think the most important thing for each individual here on Earth is to get connected with your authentic you. No noise on the line, no disturbances there, but really work towards connecting with who you really are, because there is your power. And if you step into your power, you can create anything and everything you want for you, in your relationships, and for the people around you.
I love it. Thank you so much for helping us on our journey to becoming toxic person proof.